Are you somebody like me who is a normal person, has their life put together, has the responsibilities taken care of, and yet because they play video games, you find yourself struggling with respect with some people? Well, today, I wanted to take a look at a video that I watched a long time ago, and I've been meaning to react to it for a long time, actually. Why gaming still isn't respected. I watched this video a long time ago, and when I watched it, I threw in my React Soon playlist, and I honestly never got back around to it. But today, we are actually finally doing it, guys. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I am your guy with so many YouTube channels. Let's see what this video is all about. It's kind of like I'm watching it for the first time. I don't remember exactly when I watched it, but guys, let's get into it.
Nowadays, the video game industry is bigger than Hollywood, it's bigger than the music industry, and it still gets no respect.
My first issue with video games is that I believe that as a rule, it is a massive waste of your time.
And this is the common consensus around most people. Like, I often joke on the channel, and we've made a couple videos talking about this. We chat about it in streams every once in a while where it's like, hey, that video game you're playing, it's a waste of time, but it's okay if you binge Breaking Bad all 5 seasons within 2 days.
I think video games are for children.
I don't know if that game expands your understanding or your ability to contribute to the larger conversation.
Go outside, get some fresh air. Beating Tetris is not a life goal.
Yeah, but again, like, the problem with all of this is gaming is arguably better than what most people do, and that's just sitting around on their phone, doom scrolling, you know, getting all of that dopamine pumped to their brain, watching adult content all day. It's like everybody sits down and they judge people who play video games, but their life isn't put together. You know what? If you are somebody who does nothing but take care of yourself, you grind, I don't know, if you work all day, like, you know what? I'll respect your opinion a little bit more, but let me live my life. The problem is, out of everything in this planet right now, why is it still that video games can't find that same respect? I personally don't understand it. Okay, and we'll get into it probably throughout the video. I'm sure that we're going to touch on it, but I did make a video a long time talking about this. I actually understand why girls are unattracted to guys who play video games, and perhaps we'll get into that entire conversation. If not, I'll point you over to that video. But as a general rule, why video games? Because it happens from both men and women. It doesn't even have to come to an attraction standpoint. You have a lot of people who just automatically look down on you. Like, if I went to work and talked about the video games that I like, talked about how much fun I had playing Fortnite last night, the people there would judge me. And I know we're only 25 seconds of the video. Sorry, I'm already still yapping. We're going to get into it.
I'm going to be honest with you. I thought I would find a lot more instances of people giving video games the middle finger, but what you just saw is just about all I could find, and initially, I thought this meant that making this video would just be an overreaction, and that people today truly didn't feel this way about video games.
It changed a little bit. It changed a little bit, but at the same time, man, like, you still have the majority of society who doesn't play video games really dogging, like, they legitimately look down on people who play video games, and it's crazy. And apologies, I will do a little bit of a jump cut if he continues to have his face there, because I don't want to have my face cam over it. I'll move it over to the left side.
And it turns out most people don't, but
wow.
Just because the majority of
I'll give it a minute, okay? If it's still there, I'm gonna move it.
People don't have extreme opinions on video games doesn't mean they aren't disrespecting them and making gamers feel like outsiders. In fact, I think the current popularity and success of video games has almost made gamers feel like we're not allowed to feel like social outcasts. And while
That's interesting. I'm gonna let him expand his point.
while I'm very grateful for all the great games we have, I can't just ignore that something's still off. Gaming is not a normalized hobby.
No, it's still not. It's still not. It's still looked at as something that children do. And as somebody who's been getting older, I'm 27 years old. I just turned 27. And you still have people. I get people in my comment sections where it's like, seriously, grown man pushing 30. Sometimes people write pushing 40 talking about Fortnite. And I understand it's typically the people that are chronically online. But you deal with this stuff a lot in real time. Like I said, I would not get laughed at work, but I know that people wouldn't respect me at work if I went and talked about all the video games I liked. It's viewed as something that just children do. And the problem being is we are the first generation that is actually growing up with these types of things. So and originally, mostly kids just played it. But I'll ask you this, and we talked about this again many times on the channel. At what point should I be giving up my hobby? I've enjoyed playing video games my entire life. Is it when I turn 18? Should I just stop playing video games forever? And what about all the things you do? Scrolling around on TikTok, watching adult content, binging Netflix, eating yourself into an early grave. Like, why is it video games out of everything that's picked on? You would think that it's something like the people who just lay in bed constantly eating with all the dishes on their side table. You would think it's something along those lines, but no, it's gaming. The one where I'm actively sitting down, having a conversation with my friends, laughing, having fun, actually, like at some points, depending on the game that you're playing, challenging your brain. I'm not saying that video games are good for you. I just don't understand, like, why out of everything have we switched on? Like, we live in such a... Here's the thing. We live in such a backwards world where everything that is not supposed to be normalized is normalized, but we didn't have that switch for video games? What's going on? Everything is totally okay now that typically wasn't okay in the entirety history of the world, but video games we left? I don't get it. I don't get it. This is going to be a long reaction, isn't it, guys?
Let me show you what I mean. I want you to imagine you bust up into a stranger's house because you want to make some new friends. But upon entering their house, you don't immediately notice anything that gives off those gamer vibes we all know and love. With that in mind, would the first question you ask them be, what video games do you play? No, because they'd most likely just say, I don't play video games.
But the problem is you would only say that to somebody if you see a gaming setup. Like, otherwise, that would be a weird thing. Like, within everything that I just said, okay, like, where gaming is a lot more normalized now for hobby for just men in general, but people oftentimes suppress that to impress women. The video game nerds absolutely do still exist. Like, it's weird, and it's something that I would ask in, like, grade 5 if I went over to somebody and be like, hey, what games do you like to play? That's not a conversation that you should be having with somebody. Well, I mean, like, if you find a common interest amongst one another, you're talking about, like, what do you do in your free time? But the problem is, we also live in a world where it's like, what do you do in your free time? What I'm supposed to say is hang out with my family, raise my daughter, which I do that. Don't get me wrong. I do that, and I love doing it, and quite frankly, it is a hobby of mine. But God forbid I say gaming. God forbid I say gaming. Then I'm looked at as an immature child.
Then the conversation would become awkward, which would make your social anxiety kick in, prompting you to run away in order to compose yourself before coming back to apologize and ask what their favorite movie or song is, because everybody watches movies and listens to music.
Yeah, exactly. Like, is it really that different? Is it? It's not.
Probably aren't watching the Game Awards though, because it's targeted towards gamers. And yet, despite that fact, it almost feels like the Game Awards doesn't want to be associated with the stigma around video games.
It feels like the people who make the video games don't matter enough, or are not cool enough, or are not Hollywood enough.
Yeah, and then we look at the celebrities of all people. Like, you know what I was talking about, like how backwards things are? You have, like, some of the weirdest and scummiest people of all time that are raised to such a beautiful elevation. Like, hey, there's an award for your song here, but you're a piece of crap, but God forbid a developer gets an award. If people look, could you imagine walking out into the world, going to school, going to your job, whatever you do in a day-to-day life, and saying, yeah, I was watching the Game Awards last night. I'm not hating on the Game Awards, just imagine, like, how society would treat you.
To present the awards.
I, along with Alana, don't think the Game Awards are all bad, but as she alluded to, some priorities definitely need to shift if we are to believe this is truly a show meant to celebrate video games and their devs.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna wrap it up apparently.
And not just one giant ad where traditional celebrities can just goof off.
Pew, pew, pew.
I mean,
it's so demeaning, dude. It's so demeaning. I hate that. I didn't see that.
Why do these traditional celebrities get to be in gaming ads when, to my knowledge, gaming influencers don't advertise anything outside of gaming? Why can't a good game speak for itself like some movies often do, since those movies are why the actors are famous in the first place? Probably for the same reason the very platform that hosts these gaming influencers treats them differently than regular influencers. In fact, MatPat, creator of the Theorist channels, actually interviewed former YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki about this very issue at the...
Okay, sorry, I gotta pause it. I'm letting it go too long without reacting to it. I'm sorry, I know it's how reaction content works, but I was a little bit locked in. I'm not quite understanding his point yet, but I know I just paused it mid-thought, and I'm very, very sorry about that.
2019 Gaming Creators Summit.
There's all sorts of stuff out there that feels like gaming is kind of a second thought. We're relegated to our own platform with YouTube Gaming, our own app, our own social media handle, our own trending tab.
That's an interesting point. But gaming is like its own separate thing. It's like on YouTube, it has like your movies and shows or something like that, right? I don't know. Should it be just lumped in with everything else? It's lumped into the algorithm. So I get gaming videos along with everything else that I watch. I don't know. That's an interesting point.
It feels like we're being segregated off from the rest of YouTube, even though we're delivering a huge value to this platform.
Not only does a fat chunk of YouTube's views come from gamers, but so does the largest chunk of revenue in the entertainment industry. So what's the deal? Why does gaming seem to have the same social stigma attached to it that it's had ever since its early days? And more importantly, Can we even do anything about it?
Because oftentimes within this society, typically people don't stray away from their first impression too much, and everybody's first impression of video games was that's for kids. Kids play that and they grow up the rest of their lives thinking that way without even just giving it a second thought of, hey, maybe people will like this into their adulthood. People look at it as like, oh, well, you better stop playing with those toy cars, something along those lines, but it's different. There's stories. And I take video games as a way to socialize. Like, at the end of a long day, sometimes I like to sit down and just have some fun with my friends. Like, I have a kid. Like, right now, I'm recording this YouTube video. My kid's sleeping. I'm watching her right now. I can't go out and hang out with any friends. Like, gaming is a fantastic way for me to socialize, and I know so many people that do that as well. But anyways, I'll point you back to the same thing. Like, at what point, and answer this to me, anybody who disagrees with me, but you're probably, if anybody disagrees with me, they're definitely not watching this far into the video. At what point should I stop enjoying video games? And I can say the same thing to you. Should you just like, oh, you're an adult now. Why don't you give up on, I don't know, like movies? We can all relate to that because everybody loves movies. You a big fan of the Jurassic Park movies? Are you a big fan? Wicked. That's a popular one right now. Why you still like a show about people singing? Isn't that kind of strange? Didn't we sing like that and over-exaggerate when we were kids, like watching Nickelodeon? Didn't we do that? Aren't you a little old to be doing that? Like, no, it's a piece of art that I enjoy watching. And it'd be insane to look at it otherwise, but people are like, nobody's logic is consistent in this society anymore, man.
Well, just like trying to convince yourself you should cook dinner at home instead of going to Taco Bell, it's complicated. What you need to understand first, though, is that it all started with a little thing called generational myopia. In his article about why the mainstream media struggles to cover video games, Ben Lindbergh states, largely because of what former Times writer Seth Shachel calls generational myopia, the keepers of the cultural sections aren't convinced that gaming merits a spot on the masthead alongside longer-lived entertainment cornerstones.
Yeah, and you can see that same type of problem happening like with superheroes too. Superhero movies. And again, that's another thing. I want to talk about superheroes. I grew up in a time where you were so weird if you like superheroes, but all of a sudden it's pushed in the media a little bit and everybody likes it, right? And then I feel so bad for the people who were like legit, like probably before my time. Like, I didn't grow up in a time where like we had actual bullies, like because the schools didn't allow that. I mean, like you had emotional bullies, which was a weird thing. I was never bullied myself, but you get the point. You didn't have like the typical bullies that my parents would talk about. I actually feel so bad for those people who like got their heads bashed in lockers and stuff like that because they were a nerd and they like superheroes, but now they're like watching the rest of the world like superheroes. And it's just so weird. Like, I grew up in the time where it was weird to like video games. Like, every young man ended up liking video games, or every young kid, I should say, liked video games. We all played games growing up. But if you wanted a chance with a girl, then all of a sudden she would be like, he plays games. But they still do that. Like, oh, the stories that I could tell you, man. I don't know if I can talk about it. The stories that I could tell you, dude, it's ridiculous. Like, from my workplace, I spent quite a few years in a female-dominated area. And the amount of husband bashing, boyfriend bashing, like talking about like, I'll get into it, okay? I used to work in an emergency room, and there was a lot of fantastic people, don't get me wrong. Fantastic people, and I intend on this channel to have this go mainstream one day, so at some point, one of you might be watching this video. If I had a good relationship with you, then you're obviously not the person that I'm talking about, okay? The type of person I'm talking about, but I have watched so many things. Like, my particular job, I'm not going to get into that. My particular job was a little bit more solo, and I would walk around making sure that a lot of patients had like their tests done and things like that. The amount of times that I've seen like people just sitting and chilling at a desk and they're like just talking about life, talking about their boyfriends and husbands, and the way that I've heard them talk about it, where it's like, oh my god, he's got his desk and his stupid little headphones and he puts it on and he just lays playing with his friends, like it's so cringe. Like, they don't use the word cringe, but you get the point. Like, they actively laugh and make fun of their husbands, and I'm just every time I walk by and I listen to it and I'm like, really? Like, he's probably working real hard to make you happy, right? I know that you're working as well, but he's probably like thinking that he has a decent relationship and you're over here like bashing him behind his back. Like, it's incredible the amount of people that really view video games this way, man, and the way that society takes a look at it.
Later in the article, Brian Crescente mentions that a lot of these publications are run by people who probably didn't grow up playing video games. This, of course, implies that they don't seem to understand them.
I completely forgot what I was mentioning the first time I started talking about superheroes, and then I went off the... But the point being, I don't know if this has changed, but I remember when the Avengers movies first came out, it wasn't viewed as art, so they weren't getting nominated for awards, but they were like literally the best movies that have come out.
Actor and comedian Brian Callen puts it best.
For older people, it's subversive. We don't trust it, we don't like it, we don't understand it, and it scares us a little bit. Because
So if you don't understand it, why are we speaking on it? Why are we judging it? You know what I do when I don't understand something? I seek information.
it also reminds us of our own mortality.
We're also brainwashed to thinking that video games are for losers.
All of that.
What's interesting
Rogan's totally correct on that. Totally correct.
Brian here, not to be confused with Brian Crescente, is that he actually did come from the first generation to grow up with video games. So the only logical conclusion is that Brian probably didn't get to play video games as a kid because his parents likely had a negative perspective on them, which then influenced Callen, just like the media does with the rest of the US. The only problem...
Yeah, well said. Well said. I remember, I forgot the context of this video, and I'm remembering why I enjoyed it so much.
Problem is, this line of thinking is flawed. By that logic, all millennials, Gen Z, and even Gen Alpha would think this way about video games too. This mindset would just get passed down to each subsequent generation. In case it wasn't clear, I obviously have no idea what Brian's dad thinks of video games.
And very important, quick pause here. I know I just said that was very well said. I meant by the creator to this video, not what Brian Callen was saying.
But my dad is from Gen X, just like Callen, yet he doesn't think the same way about video games as Callen does. You also have millennials like Mandy B, who you saw in a clip earlier in the video. And when discussing who she would or wouldn't date on her podcast, she said,
I would rather you have a hobby that's not video games. Something that grows you, enlightens you.
And
sit down, get ice cream with me, and watch Netflix. I'm on to them. I'm on to them. But you know what? I guess it's a good time to talk about this. Something that I actually do understand, though, is women who are actually unattracted to men who play video games. Very long story short, because I'm going to direct you to the video where I dive a little bit more into that. It's because a lot of people who do play games and get into relationships, they are at a point in their life where they are not really like where they might want to be at life. Like, it's understandable for girls to look at guys because they're not doing anything. I get where they're coming from, where it's like, I want to do something where you grow, but I know the problem is also a lot of them say that stuff, and then that means come lay in bed with me and snuggle. A lot of girls are just upset that your attention is on something else other than them. But what's built into them, what's built into their core is it's not necessarily attractive to watch their man sitting down doing nothing. I understand it may not be doing nothing. You're socializing, you're having some fun, right? You're having some wind down time, but that's what's built into them, and they don't understand that subconsciously that's kind of what's going on. So, where I disagree with it is, and like, take me for example, okay? Take me for example. This is where I would disagree if my wife were to ever have an issue with me playing games, which she doesn't, and I'm very, very thankful for it. I have everything in my life taken care of. I take care of the kid. I do all my work. I work 3 jobs in total. I go to my day job in the morning. I come home. I take the kid. I watch her while I do my 2 other jobs online. I take care of the dog. I hang out with my wife. Like, everything in the house is taken care of. Anything in my life is taken care of, and I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing as a man. So when she sees me winding down a couple times a week playing video games, she does not get upset. If people aren't doing that, and I hope it doesn't come off this way in the sense where it's like, look how great I am. I'm such a great, capable man. I don't mean it to come off that way because I know that might be what you're thinking. My point being, I am actually very, very pro icks for women because the video games oftentimes give girls an ick and they can't help what they're attracted to. Just like if I said, it's not okay for you to like any girls with an hourglass figure or some nice legs or whatever it is, but you're like, what do you mean? I like girls with nice legs. No, you don't like girls with nice legs. That's not okay. That's what we're saying to a lot of women, but there is a lot of hypocrisy in what they say. That's the issue. I just understand it when girls are unattracted to people who play video games. Oftentimes, like I said, they don't understand why, but what pisses me off is the rest of society. The rest of society looking down on guys, everybody being brainwashed to hate this type of thing. And again, like, it's conditioned into us and nobody sees it. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, let me just enjoy my game. I'm normal. I'm a normal guy. Why am I looked down upon just for enjoying my game?
I'd be willing to bet some Gen Zers also think this way too. So while this mindset started with the older generation thanks to the infamous video game crash of 1983, we actually have video game publishers to thank for providing the perfect place for this social stigma around video games to take center stage. You see, one of the biggest reasons the crash happened in the first place was because of the oversaturation of the market and thus a loss of consumer confidence in garbage like this.
I have no idea what he's talking about when it comes to gaming crash out. I hope I didn't miss anything, and I apologize if that's the case because I know that you're watching this reaction video as opposed to the regular video. But by the way, go show the regular some video, some love. It'll be in the pinned comment description down below.
Because of this, video games were seen as a fad and lost any momentum they might have had to make it as a normalized hobby among the likes of TV and music. And Nintendo put the nail in the coffin when they pulled the Trojan horse maneuver to get their console onto store shelves in America as a toy for children. Sure, adults were playing video games alongside.
I don't think I knew that. Really? Huh. Interesting.
Children during this time, just like they were in the arcade days of Space Invaders. But when the novelty of video games began to wear off once again, the main audience left playing video games were the ones it was continually being marketed toward, thus cementing video games as a child's plaything.
Oh my god, I actually didn't know that. That's really, really interesting. Wow. I remember why I enjoyed this video the first time that I watched it. Now, for some reason, I didn't retain that information.
A waste of time. And this cycle almost seemed doomed to repeat itself from the start. It seems like everyone, including major news outlets, want a piece of the action when a hit new console or game arrives, but as soon as the novelty wears off, everyone except the gaming community stops talking about it.
Yeah, and then it's looked at as a big waste of time. And again, it's the consistency in people's logic are never there. Gaming's a waste of time. Yes, and I can point to about your entire life and talk about that being a waste of time. What are you supposed to do? Are you supposed to work 24/7? If you do that, I have all the respect in the world for you, but that's not fulfilling for me. I want to live happily because I don't know if I'm going to die tomorrow. I want to have some happiness in my life, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Before we get into that too, I am so pro shaming people who do nothing with their time but play video games. I am so for shaming those people, and I think that we should look at them and tell them to do better, and I think parents should take away their games if they're young, but even then, dads, you should step in even if your child is a grown-up 20-year-old adult who's doing nothing but his life playing video games, man. I am so for shaming the people who do that, but that's not what most people are doing. Most people just play games and just chill for a little while, have fun, and it's okay to waste your time. It's okay to do that. But Netflix isn't wasting your time. Eating isn't wasting your time. Gooning isn't wasting your time. Playing soccer isn't a waste of time. Scrolling through TikTok, frying your dopamine receptors isn't a waste of time. Video games are? Okay.
But if video games being treated as just a toy was the only issue here, they would have already bounced back from this negative social status just like TVs did shortly after they first became affordable. That's right, even owning a TV had a stigma attached to it, and for perspective...
Interesting. I didn't know that as well. In the early 1930s and 40s, though many wealthy modernists thought it D-class, like, what the hell does that mean? Oh my god, I'm not helping myself with this video. Not classy, I'm guessing, to have a TV or to watch it. Oh my god. Oh, I should edit that out.
It took less than 20 years for it to be dropped, whereas the video game crash happened 40 years ago, and it still hasn't been dropped. So yeah, there's something else going on here, because in addition to this, if you haven't noticed, there's this little thing called the internet that you're using right now, where billions of people interact with each other on a day-to-day basis. If people really wanted to, they could find a way to inform themselves about gaming news, but they don't. Sure, we're creatures of habit, so we tend to get comfortable doing or watching a lot of the same things, but there are also a lot of people who really like change. I would know because my wife is one of those people.
Who really likes change? I guess they exist. I would argue that most people don't.
Dabbled in games here and there, and while she's not an avid gamer who's obsessed with it like I am, she still has a lot of fun playing games and even recognizes them as a form of art.
And I love that, man. I love when girls actually change their minds on video games. And again, I'm very thankful for my wife. She is a Nintendo fan. I can never get her on Fortnite. Unfortunately, she's not a big fan of shooters, but she's a Nintendo girl. She's Animal Crossing. She plays a Disney game, and any Mario game my wife will play. And I'm very, very grateful to have her in my life, man. I love it when guys can find girls that not only respect video games, but actively find fun in them.
I hardly ever tell her the latest gaming news because I know she's not super interested in it for the most part. Except that one time she got mad at me for not updating her on the latest Nintendo Direct because they announced Switch Sports. I mean,
I love it.
was I supposed to know she was interested in? In case it wasn't clear, my wife is the most supporting person in the world and is 100% on board with my passion for video games, and she'll even tolerate my fangirling while watching a Nintendo Direct with me from time to time.
I absolutely love that. My wife would do the same thing. My wife would absolutely do the same thing. It's so nice to hear, guys. It's so nice to hear. And while you might have been watching this video and you probably related in the sense where you're struggling with women because a lot of them have been conditioned to find gaming and gamers unattractive and automatically, like, no matter how capable you are as a person, if you play video games, you're looked down upon. But there are amazing, amazing girls out there. And it's nice that this guy found one of them.
But my point is, her interests, for the most part, lie elsewhere. Just like many others, she's at a point in her life where she knows what she likes and what she doesn't. She couldn't care less about playing Super Smash Bros., for example. Probably because she sucks at it, but that's similar to how my dumbass sucks at sports, which is why I don't really like playing them. But this is because it's natural to not want to do things you're no good at because it's not fun. Video games are very hard to get good at, and they carry a very big intimidation factor.
Yeah, that's actually true. Like I said, like, every time that I've tried to get my girl into a shooting game, and she's tried, she just never really liked them. Perhaps that's a reason.
Not only do you have way too many sweats frothing at the mouth to rise to the top of the leaderboards on Overwatch, but you also have incredibly complex games that some people just get overwhelmed at the idea of and never give it a shot. Not to mention there are those who are simply fearful of the addictive nature of games. There are also way too many games to choose from these days that range from something as simple as jumping on enemies to figuring out the perfect combination of items, weapons, abilities, and even strategies needed to bring down the ultimate Giga Chad of a boss.
Yeah, I never really thought about that. It's actually very difficult to get into gaming as opposed to watching something something that we've all been doing since we can even remember, right? Like, my daughter's 7 months old and she has her favorite movie. Like, yeah, it's a very, very good point.
Even the games that we longtime gamers consider casual may not be as easy for some people to get into as we think. The way we engage with a game is very different from the way we engage with other forms of media. You made your first me look as much like you as possible because you are that me. It becomes an extension of yourself to live through in a digital world. In his book, Games Agency as Art, philosopher C.T. Wynn claims that the motivation behind gameplay is an inversion of how motivation for most other things operate. You don't do your taxes because it's fun, you do your taxes so you don't end up like Scott. On the
Wait, like, end up like Scott? What do you... I don't understand. I haven't watched a Scott the Woz video in a while. I miss that guy. My own fault that I'm not watching him, but he makes great videos.
On the other hand, you don't play Deltarune or Hollow Knight to check them off a list. You do it for the journey.
I see.
Okay, maybe we kind of do play them to check them off a list. Compare all...
I never really thought about it this way. There's a lot of really, like, eye-opening points in this video. I'm really, really enjoying it.
All that to something like movies, which are by nature very linear experiences.
But then video games are the waste of time, right? Gaming's the waste of time. Hey, what's popular on Netflix right now? Scroll, scroll, scroll for 1 whole hour. Oh, let's try watching this one and then do this. Or this. Piling on the pounds day after day, but hey, at least I'm not a gamer.
Games not only take far more time than movies to play through, but have expanded far beyond linear experiences. Movies only require you to stare at a screen and literally nothing else. You can even just have it on in the background. Video games often require many components such as your reflexes, hand-eye coordination, strategy, skill, experience, patience, and in most cases, your undivided attention. And I haven't even touched on the fact that music, a whole other industry, is merely an ingredient, albeit an absolutely essential one, in both movies and video games.
Yeah, I'm not gonna compare it to singing at all because, like, music is a fantastic, fantastic thing in my opinion, but you could even argue, if you really want to go there, it's a waste of your time.
I can just listen to my favorite song on the way to work, whereas sometimes I have to contemplate whether it's worth it to boot up my save file on Tears of the Kingdom, or whether I should just wait until I have a larger chunk of time to play. Playing a video game for someone not familiar with them can quite literally be a lot of work, because as Professor Wen puts it, those who play games play them for the struggle. The reason I couldn't find many videos of people bashing video games for the opening of this video is partially because people who say things like that on the internet will be harassed and no one wants that, but also
I mean, yeah, nowadays they would, but it's interesting how times have changed again, man. Now they would, but even then, they would probably still look down on everybody. Like, they would just turn off the replies and be like, oh my god, a lot of incel energy there.
also because a lot of people actually don't feel that way. They simply don't play video games for a multitude of reasons, and that's okay. I'm willing to bet that the reason gamers seem to be segregated off from the rest of YouTube is because gaming is so different and not as widely appealing to a general audience.
And it's important to note throughout this entire video, if you straight up don't like video games, I don't care about that. I think like everybody can do whatever they want to their life. It's just the problem is, I have an issue when people actually look down on people for playing video games. That I take issue with. Again, like, I have everything taken care of in my life that needs to be taken care of, but yet I will be looked down upon by a good chunk of the population because I play video games. I don't get that. And if you want to take it even like a step further than that, I already know that any guy looking down on me, I could probably strangle with my bare hands. Like, I don't get it, man.
Audience. The reason game companies can't let games speak for themselves is because, unlike movies, you have to play a game to know whether it's good or not. That and traditional celebrities bring a wider audience.
Now, why would I try it when it's a waste of time? You know, I just like to do more productive things in my day, kind of like watching a movie.
So while I initially considered the possibility of older generations being the culprit here, I don't think they deserve as much of the blame as we give them. This sentiment spans generations, and it's why simply covering video games in mainstream news won't suddenly make games a social norm so long as there are people of all ages who simply don't have a desire to play them.
Yeah, I mean, like, at the end of the day, they don't have a desire to play them, but is that really the reason, is because they don't have a desire? No, I disagree. Society's been conditioned that way. At some point years ago, it was looked down upon and a thing that only children do, and then that kind of just stuck, and it doesn't really matter the age.
In fact, I might go as far as to say that I think it's kind of too late for video games to be covered in mainstream media anyway, because the gap in knowledge about games between gamers and non-gamers has gotten too big.
Well, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, okay? And he could be totally right about that, but the problem is, the superhero thing is the one that I'm really stuck on, because back in the day, when I grew up, who would have thought? Like, it was an unimaginable thought that superheroes would become mainstream. People would really like it, but then again, you're starting to see that with some video game movies, like the Mario movie, the Sonic movie, things like that. Like, I don't know. I have a difficult time seeing it become mainstream and widely accepted by the majority of the population, I would say. It's possible. It's possible. But I keep thinking, like, crazier things have happened. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, society's so backwards right now that, I don't know, like, think about all of the things that are just accepted. Even something as simple as, like, stuffing your face while you're watching Netflix day after day, doing absolutely nothing with your life. If that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. But I don't understand why gaming is the only one that hasn't really switched. But gaming isn't necessarily bad for you. It's not what I'm saying. Yeah, I hope you guys get what, like, I'm drawing to in this video.
So even if a mainstream news publication hired a gaming expert to report on games, at least a little less than half the American population just wouldn't get it. And that's not even considering the
Not only that, they would laugh at him. They would laugh at him. Gaming expert.
Countless people who play video games casually while not caring about video game coverage.
That's coming through my microphone, isn't it? Some guy revving his engine. It's 9 p.m. at night on a weekday.
Such as my wife. Wait, hold up. Am I saying that everyone in the US has to be playing video games for it to be considered a normalized hobby? That's exactly what I'm saying. Seriously, can you think of anyone you know who doesn't watch things on a screen, whether that be movies, TV, or even YouTube or TikTok? Video is literally ingrained in our society. Video games? Not so much. This applies to music even more so. Music.
No, you know what it's going to take? You know what it's going to take? It's going to take a couple girls of high status within, I guess you could say, Twitter or celebrity culture, and like legitimately really, really enjoy video games. And that's going to make everybody, you know, want to try video games. That's going to breed a lot of girl gamers, and it's going to be more respected within relationships. And because guys will bend over backwards doing whatever they want, thinking of doing their very best to be cool for women. That's what it's going to take. I wholeheartedly believe that. That's what it's going to take. You need to get a bunch of high, or not even a bunch, some really, really high status women getting involved and like spreading the word that video games are awesome, all of a sudden girls will start liking a bunch of guys who play video games, and it might be a little bit of a trend. Maybe it won't wear off because, again, you have that biological need built into you to want to watch your man accomplish something. But that's the beginning step, in my opinion.
Is something that's not only ingrained in American society, but in the human race itself.
And the human race is full of NPCs. All it's going to take is some high status people to convince them otherwise.
It is quite literally universal. So how do we get everyone to play video games?
By the screen people telling you to. Hey, I saw this guy say I should play video games. I'm gonna.
Well, we kind of can't. Sure, we can show people the value of games all we want, and we could even let them try out a game or two they might like, but the reality is, there will always be people who don't want to play games for whatever reason. And frankly, some people, especially those who have an addictive personality, might benefit from never playing video games. And that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I want games to stay out of the mainstream news and out of the hands of those corporate fools who just want to exploit our nostalgia to make a quick buck.
That quote aged well, did it not? That aged pretty well.
I mean, they're already doing that without it being a social norm. I think I agree with Lindbergh in that maybe there's a benefit to gaming being overlooked. Look, I've come to terms with the idea of gaming being something that not everybody understands the appeal of. I want to help spread that awareness, sure, but
Scott doing?
I'm okay with where games are at. At least in terms of social status. I think it would be better to let the actual gamers on YouTube like Scott the Woz, Spawnwave, or even Daryl Talks Games.
Yeah, you know what? That's a really good point. I watch content from people who are really, really passionate about the games that I like, and I would like to continue to do that. That's a really, really good point. Again, like, a lot of the points this guy made has been very eye-opening throughout this entire video. I wouldn't want to watch it from some corporate sense unless it's like something special like a Nintendo Direct or an Epic Games announcement. But even then, I would watch that kind of stuff for information. I like watching people talk about the games that they enjoy. And I would imagine, honestly, like that's why a lot of you probably come to this channel. You probably come to watch somebody who really enjoys Fortnite talk about Fortnite. That's my guess. Like, and if you come for me personally, I really appreciate that. But I would imagine that's the vast majority of people who watch my content.
Continue to handle the game coverage because here's the thing. Gamers are already socially accepted. Among other gamers. Who cares if the rest of the world understands games? Look, maybe I'm wrong and one day we wake up and everyone is playing games. But other than our insecurities, what would that really change?
Yeah, that's a good point. Who cares what stupid people think about you? I'll leave it at that. Who legitimately cares what some idiot thinks about you? Somebody who is really going to look at you, somebody who's capable, somebody who has their entire life in check, but because you like to sit down, you like to play video games, they look down on you. Why should you care what they think about you? They are not worth your time and you are above them.
Would it positively affect anything in the video game industry other than profits, or would it lead to more corporate greed? Only time will tell. So, what do we make of all this? I just spent the last...
Hang on. Let me try this. No, that's not better. Hang on. Yeah! Okay, we're going to finish the video just like this.
Last 14 or so minutes telling you how big of an issue all of this is, yet the conclusion I came to is that it's no big deal, because in reality, it's not. Does that change the way I or even you might feel about it? Probably not, but I think the way we tend to approach situations like this is usually bass-ackwards. You see, what started out as a simple question blossomed into something that caused me to do a little self-searching. And while I quite frankly obsessed over it a little too much, I think I came to a conclusion that gave me some closure on the matter. Instead of focusing on how we can get others to like playing or even respecting video games, I think we should instead take a good look in the mirror and ask ourselves how we would feel if we were on the other side of this.
Ooh, but the problem is you're not going to get people to do that. Oh, and I realize that I'm still in the OBS scene over here. You're not going to get people to do that. We live in a society today where people refuse to put the shoe on the other foot. And I know that I know exactly where he's getting with this, and it's a good point. But people will not do that. It's almost not part of the human brain.
At the end of the day, what we do is our choice. So let's be more understanding of the fact that video games are simply not for everyone, no matter how many games they may try.
Yeah, and it's important for you guys watching this video. If you look down on people because they do not like video games, that is just as bad. Just as bad. People can like what they want. Everybody has different interests. You yourself have specific interests. People don't understand that. That's okay. They can respect that. As long as your interest isn't like murder, you know? So, and it's just a normal thing. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I will say it can get excessive. You need to have your life in check.
Let's stop gatekeeping and instead embrace the fact that different sections of the gaming community are more alike than not, instead of dividing ourselves over stupid console wars. Because the only people we're hurting by doing those things are ourselves.
Yeah, if you're part of console wars, that's crazy. That's crazy. We were like jokingly a part of console wars when I was in like grade 4. And even then, we didn't really take it seriously. Unbelievable that people unbelievable that people participate in console wars.
It just shows those outside the gaming community that the only thing they're missing out on are fanboys and fangirls fighting amongst each other over corporations who only care about our money in the first place. But I think the most important thing we can do is impact the next generation by showing them the value not only in the game, but in the gamer too. Then, who knows? In time, maybe gamers can be cool.
Yeah, I'm not too sure if that's ever going to happen, to be honest with you. But again, like I said, I never would have thought that about superheroes. There's a lot of things in this world that I would have never thought to be accepted, and here we are. So who knows? Gaming might be there on the horizon. So first of all, go show the original creators some love in the description. Pin comment down below. This video was absolutely phenomenal. Secondly, if you're interested in me diving into what I had to say about dating and relationships specifically, I made a very, very in-depth video that I'm very proud of, and I would love for you guys to check it out right here if you have not seen it. I believe that everybody on this channel should watch it at least once, and I would appreciate it if you went over there. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. Take care.